Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So tomorrow marks the 462nd anniversary of the construction of the St. Basil Cathedral. And when I first started making art out of metals, I thought about some of the radioactive metals, and I did some calculations on which ones might be somewhat stable. And if you go down past uranium, you have a lot of unstable elements. But then you get to 114 through, I think, 117. Some of those could potentially, according to my neural networks that I wrote, some of them could potentially have half-lives that are in the millions to tens of millions of years. I believe 114 to 116. 115 is Moscovium. And right below bismuth on the periodic table. And I can only imagine what it would be like to pour, if you had a silicone mold of this stuff, to pour it out of Moscovium. And if it behaves anything like bismuth, you could use different voltages to anodize it and get all these colors in there. Now the problem is that all of the Moscovium that we have so far produced is highly unstable. So this is a map of all of the isotopes that we have created so far. So right here, I believe this is bismuth, and everything after that, so far that we know of, is unstable. The problem is that when your elements are light, you want the number of neutrons to roughly equal the number of protons. But as it turns out, for heavier elements, you might need twice as many neutrons as protons, which makes them tricky to make, because if you bombard any of the smaller atoms together, you're going to get this kind of ratio. But I suspect, my neural networks tell me that there's another set of magic numbers. See, part of the reason certain elements are stable is that they have a magic number of protons and neutrons. And I did some neural networks to calculate in between those numbers how stable they are. So if the number of protons or neutrons is 2, 6, 20, 28, 50, 82, and 126, right? So the heaviest stable isotope is lead with 82 protons and 126 neutrons, right? That makes lead 208, and that is the heaviest isotope that we have never observed decaying. It might not even be stable, by the way. But it turns out that when you get to a 115, according to my neural networks, just based on the earlier isotopes that are still stable, there is an isotope of Moscovium that has a half-life of probably 10 million years. It's kind of tricky, though, because I did some calculations, and the neural network is very sensitive to... so, for example, we don't know if lead-208 is radioactive, but if you put in a very long half-life, like 10 to the 20 years, all of a sudden Moscovium isn't so stable anymore. So that's a tricky one. It's hard to say. But it would be really nice to make a St. Basil's Cathedral out of Moscovium, because right now, as we know, there's a lot of drama going on in Russia, and I think it would just bring a lot of world peace if we... I don't know. 20 years ago, when I heard a Russian spy was killed with polonium-210, I wanted to know what the Russians would call polonium. I found it hard to believe they would call a substance polonium, but they do. So apparently, when chemistry is involved, or space exploration is involved, we can all work together, right? It's kind of weird. So it'd be nice to pour a sculpture of the St. Basil Cathedral out of Moscovium when we find it, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.